title of this is actually making me pretty hungry for a calzone. Haven't really had a calzone, I don't think, maybe since high school or college, maybe. Well, calzone high school. They had them at college, but they called them the Strombolis. My fiance actually has recently had a calzone at a Pizza Hut called a Pizzone. So maybe I'll think of the calzone again. I don't know about eggplant though, because I'm not really the biggest eggplant fan, but the calzone, though, was a good episode. Has a couple really good stories, I would say, that stand out to me for sure when watching Seinfeld. So I definitely prefer this one over the previous episode we just talked about, the Wig Master. This one I thought was a little more entertaining. So, the main story here is George was eating a calzone during a meeting with the Yankees. And Steinbrenner tried a calzone, tried a bite of his calzone. He got hooked on them. So for a while, George was actually bringing a calzone to eat with Steinbrenner at 1 o'clock. And he was eating lunch with Steinbrenner in his office. You know, kind of having a good thing with the big boss going there, right? Well, things went a little south on that. Because George mentioned how he thinks that the people at Paisanos, the place he gets the calzones from, frown on him because they never see him put a tip in the tip jar. Which, that gets in George's head too much. He then, of course, has a day where he goes back to get the calzones, and he tries to, speak and say, and make it obvious he's putting a tip in a tip jar. Well, then the guy gets distracted by something else and doesn't see George put the dollar in a tip jar. So he decides to pull the dollar back out, that way he can see him placing it back in. Unfortunately, though, of all times to actually get caught, he gets caught with his hand in the tip jar, and they think he's stealing money from the tip jar. So they don't let him have his calzones, and they ban him from Paisanos. So George now has to go with a plan B. What is that plan? We'll hold off on that. Of course, Steinbrenner, of course, was just so hooked on Paisanos, on the calzones. George refused, was trying to get him to get hooked on something else, but it wouldn't work. So that's why George needed a plan B to make Steinbrenner happy. Because obviously, if not, he can get fired. And George doesn't want to get fired from his job. He actually likes working for the Yankees. We'll fast forward in the late season 8, and we'll get something different. But So anyways, before we get that far, another story going on was that Kramer, which kind of ties into... Actually, we'll do Kramer's story next, which ties into, what happened with George. So Kramer has this habit now where he likes to wear clothes fresh out of the oven. He would be going, whenever he gets ready to do something, not fresh out of the oven, fresh out of the dryer. At first it was the dryer, then it became the oven. So he goes to do that, and anytime he's about to put on a new pair of clothes, he goes to the dryer, puts the quarters in, dries them, puts them back on. It's just his thing. It's just another one of Kramer's weird little things he likes to do. Yeah, he came up with. Strange, but it's Kramer. Until he starts to run out of quarters. So he has all this change spread out on Jerry's table, and he can't find quarters. So then plan B is he starts putting his clothes in the oven at like 325 degrees, and that's when he starts putting them on. Is when they're fresh out of the oven, since he ran out of quarters. So at first he started using Jerry's oven because he was making a pie in his oven. And of course, he's had it's all natural and whatnot, but it's like, no, it's not. It's just a strange little thing. So then, when George gets into his pickle about his calzones, he finds out that Newman passes Paisanos on his postal route, or as said in the blooper reel, his postal walk. His postal walk. I'm making fun of the postal walk, which I thought was quite funny actually. But so originally, then George talks to Newman. And of course, Newman says, I want some things in return. I want a calzone in return, and a slice of pepperoni pizza, and I think one or two other things. He was asking for a little too much, but George was like, hey, fine. He goes, I'll give you, the money for every week, and this and that, so you can do that. So that way, he can get the calzones, and get the paisanos, and everybody's happy. Well, the first day it happens, George arrives to find out that it was raining, and Newman calls in sick whenever it's raining. He doesn't do his postal route when it rains. So George is screwed. So then he goes over to Kramer and asks him to do it for that day. He says, okay, and says, don't worry about giving me money, I have change. So first we see Kramer walking through the rainy streets with his cargo pants and these big pockets of change, like coins. That's all he's got. He's got no paper bills. He got just coins. And of course he slips, and a bunch of them, go all over the place on the street and whatnot. Just another, comedic stunt. So when he gets there to order the paisanos, to order the calzones, he sees the big pizza oven. So what does Kramer do? Because his coat's all wet from the rain, he asks them if they can put his coat in the pizza oven to basically have it come fresh out of the oven, like it'd be fresh out of the dryer. Well, of course, how is some other guy supposed to know the proper heat temperature? And Kramer heats up his jacket, but the jacket gets ruined. So Kramer gets in an argument with that guy, and then he also doesn't get his calzones because all he had was pennies, and they wouldn't take a payment in pennies. Need paper bills, as he said. So Kramer didn't get them. Of course, Kramer then goes to George's office and explains what happens, and his coat's ruined, so he throws his coat into George's garbage can. So then George has one last resort, and there was some other Italian restaurant around the corner that he could probably get some calzones from. So he heads there. Well, only problem is first off, he's already running late, because Steinbrenner knows that it's 1:15, and George wasn't there yet. But then when Kramer threw his jacket into the garbage, it leaned up against the air vent. And the jacket smelled like paisanos, so because it went through the smell through the vent, it got to Steinbrenner's office. So he went down to hunt it down, and he literally just messed up George's office looking for the calzones. So then George came back, and then I guess Steinbrenner found out that the jacket was in paisanos, and basically mentioned how because Kramer put it in there to heat it up, and then that's when Steinbrenner was like, you know what? I got a good idea for the Yankees. We should heat up the clothing or something like that. He said, which was another idea, and that's actually how the episode ended. But yeah, all because Steinbrenner upsets over the calzones. So I guess he was off the calzones after that. I don't know. The other two stories that I thought were pretty funny was Elaine was having dinner with this guy she lost a bet with. He bet Elaine that Dustin Hoffman was in Star Wars, which was not true. So they went out to eat. Jerry starts telling Elaine he thinks this guy is asking her out without technically asking her out. He's doing this whole thing with, betting someone and purposely losing a bet just so, he can go out and not get rejected, basically. Which Elaine thinks is crazy. I think, later, the guy sees Jerry, and he meets Jerry and asks him if he's into cigars or whatnot. He says he knows a friend in Montreal he can get cheap cigars on the cheap for. And then with it coming up on George's wedding and Jerry being the best man, he thinks, hey, that may not be a bad idea for a wedding gift for George. So he tells him to, hit him up with that, with those cigars. Which then Todd's like, yeah, sure. And he basically tells Elaine, he goes, hey, yeah, and then, I can give you the cigars so we can go out to dinner again. And that's when Elaine starts saying, was this supposed to be a date? He's like, what do you mean it's a date? It's like, you're purposely, and she basically said, what Jerry said, and he's like, Elaine, not everything has to be a date. It's just dinner. That's all it is. And Elaine's just like, yeah, So she keeps going along with it. Finally, there was finally they got together for a dinner. And who does Todd bring along? His parents. And of course, as they're leaving, his mom says she's a lovely woman. And then Elaine's like, "This was a date." And Todd's like, "Not everything has to be a date. This was not a date. Then what was it?" "It was a lovely evening." And then Elaine's like, "Well, fine then, bye." And then Todd tried to kiss her goodnight. She's like, "Now what was that?" She was done with him. She was done with him. Jerry, meanwhile, was dating this woman who was a hot blonde that basically, just she's there. She's basically like, "Oh, are you sure you want to get? You don't want to give me tickets for this, or are you sure you want to give Jerry a ticket?" Because Jerry was about to get a speeding ticket also, but when she brought out his registry, his license registration information, she's like, "You sure you want to do this?" And of course, based off her good looks, they don't do it. Based off her good looks, she was using her sex appeal to get what they wanted, and basically Jerry compared her like Godzilla. Well, Jerry eventually finds out that those cigars that he got from him were not Cubans, like he had told him. They were from Peru, and they even tried one. Him and Elaine even tried one. They didn't like him, so they wanted to get the money back. But instead of, and then he sent Nikki over to give him the money back, or to use her good looks to have him get out of paying. Have them return them and get the money back. It didn't work out because Todd then ends up asking Nikki out makes a bet with Nikki that Richard Nixon's middle name was Moe and not Milhouse. So then he starts doing the thing with Nikki then, who breaks it off with Jerry then, I guess, for no reason. And then, of course, at the end, Kramer basically took care of the making the payment. Todd opened the door, and he goes, "Are you gagged?" He's like, "Yeah." And then Kramer had like a big sack of his change. He goes, "Well, here," and just like slams the change into Todd, and he falls back, and that's how the episode ends. That was a funny story. I did like that Todd Gack story about how the guy was. And also, they were just like, "What kind of a name is Todd Gack anyway?" But yeah, why didn't I try that more often? Why didn't I make a bet with a girl? Actually, here's the thing. I feel like in today's day and age, if you did that, trying to make a bet with a girl and purposely lose it just so you can take her out to dinner or find other loopholes or excuses to see them, like, while we're there, we might as well go out to dinner maybe. Instead of, asking them out. I should have done that more often. Maybe I wouldn't have gotten rejected so much growing up. I really shouldn't say that. No, that's dumb of me. Plus, too, because I'm engaged right now and I'm happy and everything, so I shouldn't say that. But I thought that was a very goofy storyline. That was kind of my favorite storyline, actually. Of course, Jerry having, the hot blonde girlfriend and basically said, "Oh, you sure you want to give us this ticket?" Basically use her sex appeal to, get away with it. Now, though, to give one or two trivia facts. Well, first off, the Cuban cigars thing, was a little strange though, because when they were given a box of cigars by Susan's husband, wow, that's off. Susan's father back in season 4, George wasn't a fan of them, so he gave them the Kramer, which was the cigars that happened to burn down the cabin. Cherish the cabin, which the cabin, of course, was rebuilt, if you remember, from a few episodes ago. But there's that. So that was a little bit of like a continuity error. Let me see here. Anything else? The only other interesting fact here that I see here is one of the Seinfeld's writers, Alec Berg, not the same Alec Berg in the face painter with the hockey tickets, but Alec Berg apparently had a crush on Dylan Tays, or Danette Tays, who played Jerry's girlfriend Nikki in this episode. He apparently had a big crush on her. And then over the phone, he convinced Tays to go to the Oscars with him. Unfortunately, when he went to pick her up, he found out she had a boyfriend, a photographer, who wasn't too thrilled to see him. Tays had neglected to tell him about that on the phone, and that actually inspired the story in the season 8 finale, where Jerry was going out with this woman who had a dude named Lyle that she lived with. That kind of inspired that story. I thought it was a unique way, and not gonna lie, he had good taste for sure. If he had the hots for her, but that's an interesting fun fact. But that is the Calzone. Next up will be another 2-part episode, the Bottle Deposit, which was not supposed to be a 1-hour episode originally. But why did it become a 1-hour episode? 2-hour episode. Jeez, that'd be too long. Why did it become a 2-part episode? We will find out next in the 2-part, part 1 and then part 2 of the Bottle Deposit. And also we see an appearance from Brad Garrett as well in the next 2-part episode. Who's that? Find out next. So what are you guys' thoughts again on the Calzone? Have you guys ever had a Calzone? I would say also my 2 favorite Calzones I've had was when I was in high school. The ones in college I don't remember as much, but in high school I remember they had like a pepperoni calzone I had. We also had a meatball calzone, which was pretty good. Any sausage calzones out there? Because I love sausage on pizza also, but man, now I want to... It's the 4th of July, so I'm sure no places are really open, but man, I could go for a calzone now. Maybe someday. But what are your guys' thoughts on the Calzone episode? And Todd Gack and Kramer and his change. And then, have you ever had this incident with George where you feared that they didn't you weren't liked because you didn't see you put anything in the tip jar? What do you guys think? Leave your thoughts down in the comment section below. And be sure as always to slap a like on the video and subscribe for more content on my channel. And follow me on Twitter as well at DemandAirboy93. Until then, guys, I'm checking out. I'll catch you all later. Have a great rest of your day. And peace out, everybody.